All right, everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is the Jordan Report, and I am your host, Robert Jordan. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. It's very important. All right, I want to go over the Mexican migration issue down at the southern border. Michelle Malkin released a nice book. I haven't read the book, but there's some excerpts that have been out, and I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs from their book. And then I'm going to show you where George Soros, who's the big billionaire guy who's involved in all the migrant stuff throughout the world, where he says that he's investing money in this. He admits he's spending money on all these groups that Michelle Malkin is talking about. And then I'm going to end with a video of Ann Cochran, who researched the refugee settlement issue. Where all the Muslims were coming from, how the Somalians were getting here, and people from Iraq, and where this Muslim population came from and how they came to be in America. But I'm going to start with Michelle Malkin. I'm just going to give you a couple of paragraphs, and then I'm going to talk about George Soros, and then we're going to end with the video. In 2012, for example, the United Nations International Organization for Migration in Mexico signed cooperation agreements. The United Nations signed an agreement with Mexico with 3 migrant shelters along Mexico's southern border to support their work assisting irregulars traveling through the Mexican states of Chiapas, Oaxaca, on their way to the U.S. The IOM Pact guaranteed supplies of medicine, hygiene products, construction materials, as well as therapy services and legal training at the previously mentioned Hermanas El Camino shelter. Along with the Catholics are involved in this, because the Central Americans are Catholic people. Along with the Catholic-run Hogar de la Shelter and the Jesus, the Good Pastor shelter, IOM extended similar aid to 9 other migrant shelters in the northern and central parts of Mexico, from Chihuahua, Sonora, Tamaulipas, along the northern border to San Luis Potosí, Veracruz, and Tlaxcala in the center of the country. So the United Nations is paying for the shelters that are bringing the people from Central and South America to the southern border. On the southern border of Mexico and Chiapas, the city of Pachula is the first entry point for Central Americans headed to the U.S. There, the Fray Matias Human Rights Center provides comprehensive support to illegal alien travelers, including legal consultations, monitoring detention centers, and offering online services, art, and social activities, job training, and basic social services to migrants. We don't get into that here. This is what they're getting before they even get here. Okay? Now I'm going to move on really fast. I'm going to leave a link to the article. You have to read these whole articles and find the book, because I'm going to do the same thing. But I'm going to move on to George Soros. Now, George Soros is worth like $26 billion. Everybody should know who George Soros is by now. Okay? He's doing this all over the world. He's worth at least, at my last count, $26 billion. Okay? This was some time ago. So he's probably worth a lot more. Anyway, he has an endless amount of money. And this is what he invests his money in. Getting third world people into the Western societies. Okay? Now, this article was produced in 2016. Obama was still in office. Okay? This is prior to the election. And here's Soros saying why I'm investing $500 million in migrants. $500 million. The world has been unsettled by a surge in forced migration. Tens of millions of people are on the move, fleeing their home countries in search of a better life. Some are escaping civil war or an oppressive regime. Others are forced out by extreme poverty, lured by the possibility of economic advancement for themselves and their families. And it's his job to get them to the United States. That's what he's saying. So that they can fulfill their dream and get out of poverty. He's not asking us anything. He's just doing this. Our collective failure to develop and implement effective policies to handle the increased flow has contributed greatly to the human misery and political instability, both in countries people are fleeing and in countries that host them, willingly or not. Migrants are often forced into lives of idle despair, while host countries fail to reap the proven benefit that greater integration could bring. Bringing poor people from El Salvador and Guatemala, we could get somehow we're supposed to benefit from that. Government must play the leading role in addressing this crisis by creating and sustaining adequate physical and social infrastructure for migrants and refugees. But harnessing the power of the private sector is also critical. Recognizes this, the Obama administration recently launched a call to action. This was Obama's auction. He was George Soros' top man, asking U.S. companies to play a bigger role in meeting the challenges posed by forced migration. Today, private sector leaders are assembling at the United Nations to make concrete commitments to help solve the problem. They're not meeting with us. They're meeting at the United Nations. They're determining who comes to the country. I'll show you that in the next video, how they're the ones who's picking who's coming to the country and how many. In response, I have decided to earmark $500 million for investment that specifically address the needs of migrants, refugees, and host communities. I will invest in startups, established companies. He's got the money to do all this. He's not bluffing. Social impact initiatives and businesses funded by migrants and refugees themselves. You wonder how these people are getting right into society from Guatemala, El Salvador, and they have jobs and homes and everything almost immediately. You don't just show up with nothing in a country and all of a sudden everything's there. This has to be done for you, and this is what's happening. Although my main concern is to help migrants and refugees arriving in Europe, because he's the one who flooded Europe with all their Muslims, I will be looking for a good investment idea that would benefit migrants all over the world. This commitment of investment in equity would complement the philanthropic contributions my foundations have made to address forced migration, a problem he has been working on globally for decades, and to which we have dedicated significant financial resources. He says he's been doing this for decades. We will seek investments in a variety of sectors, among them emerging digital technologies, which seems especially promising as a way to provide solutions to the particular problems that dislocated people often face. Advances in this sector can help people gain access more efficiently to government, legal, financial, and health services. They get them hooked right into the services. They get them hooked right on in. Private businesses are already investing billions of dollars to develop such services for non-migrant communities. This is why money now moves instantaneously from one mobile wallet to another. Drivers find customers by using only a cell phone, and how a doctor in North America can see a patient in Africa in real time. Customizing and extending these innovations to serve migrants will help improve the quality of life for millions around the world. He goes on. We will also work closely with the organizations such as Office of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and the International Rescue Committee to establish principles to guide our investments. Our goal is to harness for public good the innovations only the private sector can provide. This is George. Okay? He says, I'm putting money in this stuff, and I'm going to make sure that they're successful. I'm going to put money in their businesses. I'm going to make sure they get right into society, if it's legal, whatever it is. This is why you're seeing such political clout and power that these people have. Now, I'm going to end up here with Ann Cochran. She studied the refugee settlement program and where all these people came from.
It's been over 7 years since a church group from another state brought a couple hundred refugees to the rural county where I live. I wanted to know, how could they do this? What was the governmental process that allowed the resettlement of refugees to a county ill-prepared to assimilate them? Employment opportunities were scarce. The health department was not familiar with illnesses and mental health problems of people who came from parts of the third world. The school system was not prepared to teach large numbers of students who didn't speak English, and subsidized housing was scarce. I wanted to know Who gave permission for what amounted to a dropping off of needy people in our county seat? So I began my research and posted everything I learned to a blog, Refugee Resettlement Watch, so that others might know what I learned about a federal program that is 35 years old this year. In summary, I discovered that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees was choosing most of our refugees. It's under the influence of a powerful Muslim supremacist group called the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Not surprisingly, a large number of U.S.-bound refugees are coming from countries with large numbers.
She made this video in 2015, just to update everyone.
Numbers of people who hate us, including Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, and soon from Syria, just to name a few. The U.S. State Department then distributes the refugees to 9 major federal contractors, 6 of which are so-called religious charities, but all are largely funded from the U.S. Treasury. They're not passing the plate on Sundays for the $1 billion price tag for the resettlement. And that figure does not include the extensive welfare benefits refugees receive. The refugees are then sent to over 190 cities and towns in the U.S. where the 9 major contractors support 350 subcontractors. The refugees receive help from the subcontractor for up to 6 months, and the subcontractor then submits paperwork to admit the relatives of the first group. As the years have passed, I've become increasingly alarmed by the percentage of problematic Muslim refugees admitted and distributed around the U.S. through this program. By the way, the Refugee Resettlement Program is not the only one used for legally admitting Muslims, but it is one of the most important. Many are forming cities within cities. Perhaps you know one where you live, where mosques are being built to consolidate, train, and promote a growing American Muslim population and its Islamic supremacist doctrine called Sharia. This process of Muslim colonization is called the Hijra. Muhammad told his followers to migrate and spread Islam in order to dominate all the lands of the world. He said they were obliged to do so, and that's exactly what they are doing now with the help and support of the UN, the U.S. State Department, and the Christian and Jewish groups assigned to seed them throughout the country. Your tax dollars pay for it all. I've written this little book, Refugee Resettlement and the Hijra to America, so that you will know what is happening to us and what we can do about it. We only need to look to a troubled Europe to see the path ahead for America if we can't stop this migration, and stop it soon. There's no reason on earth that we should have brought over 100,000 Somalis and another 100,000 Iraqi Muslims to America. Soon we will be resettling Syrian Muslims in large numbers. The UN at the moment has over 10,000 in a pipeline destined for our towns. The FBI told Congress recently that they cannot be properly screened. If you don't help counter the Hijra, we are, in my opinion, doomed. Over time, this migration will be more devastating to your children and grandchildren and to our country than any terrorist attack could ever be. Learn more at Refugee Resettlement Watch and SecureFreedom.org.
The good part is Trump ended the refugee settlement program. He cut it back almost to nothing. In another few years or something like that, it will disappear. I think he cut it down to 30,000 per year. So Trump is doing his part. He's trying to stop this stuff. This stuff is way outside of it has nothing to do with it. These are foreign people. This George Soros has donated a fortune fighting Trump's immigration agenda. George Soros. So when you see the Democrats and everybody fighting Trump, trying to keep the border open, trying to flood more and more people in here, this is who they're getting their funding from. So let's know that when we vote for the Democrats. When you vote for the Democrats, you're voting for George Soros.